The Bill DeMott Experience is about meeting people, going places, and learning things. And now that I'm getting into broadcasting, it's time for me to find a coach. Over 50 years in broadcasting, and he's starting in the golden age of radio. I'm Bill DeMott. This is the Bill DeMott Experience. And today I meet broadcasting legend, Ron Seggi.
My home, it's a separate building that we built. And, you know, I have people come in and say, well, this is a real man cave. But this is a functioning radio and rehearsal studio. And I have pictures on the wall, but, you know, this is like 1% of the pictures I have. I've interviewed in 25 years of doing a talk show. And I've been in the radio business for a little over 50, radio and television. But doing a nationally syndicated talk show, I've been doing it for 25 years. We've interviewed 19,000 guests. So obviously, and most of them...
19,000?
Yeah. I have no more questions to ask anyone. I can't ask you a question because I've run out of questions.
You could actually go back and
I could start all over again.
But there's nothing new to ask.
But there's nothing new to ask. I've asked every... So this is a little sitting area that we have. This goes back to you know before about my love for automobiles. This actually is supposed to be a bar, but we don't use it as a bar.
Wow.
Then we bring in my own drum sets and some of the guitars that I've had. This one is signed by Shania Twain. This one is a classic guitar, and it's kind of an automotive theme because it has authorized by the Cadillac Motor Division to use, those are all Cadillac emblems all the way up the thing. These are some of the records that I've recorded over the years. One nominated for a Grammy Award back in 1972, the year that Don McLean won the Song of the Year Award for American Pie. This is a great picture of Elvis and Joe Esposito at Elvis's wedding, and it's signed by Joe Esposito and, more importantly, by Elvis Presley.
We're going to talk about this.
Oh, I got to show you this. This was given to me by a friend of mine. I thought it was a radio at first. It's a cigar box, is what it is.
No.
Yeah, it was bought, I think, out in somewhere on Route 66. It's a cigar box.
Son of a gun.
But the irony of the story is this. About a week before my friend bought this, Paul McCartney went in the store and bought one too. And he used it on his last album that he did.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's a real guitar, and it's a real electric guitar, but it's just kind of funky looking. And then we got more pictures over here with my pals Tony Orlando and Dick Clark and Elvis and Ed McMahon and the Oak Ridge Boys, the Beach Boys down here. And this gentleman here is remarkable. This was done in one of our remote broadcasts in Lake Tahoe. And everybody has heard his voice. But yet, if you walk into a room, why don't you have a seat? Oh, you can't have a seat.
You wouldn't know who he was?
You wouldn't know who he was. But he says he sits at stadiums and he hears his voice over the loudspeaker, and nobody knows it's him. Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog. It's Chuck Negron for Three Dog Night.
No.
Yeah. And he says, I sit there and everybody goes, hey! They don't realize they have no idea it's Chuck Negron. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And these are just a few of the pictures. We do a lot of remotes. We've been at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame several times. We've done a cruise ship. We've been in Las Vegas several times, in Los Angeles, Atlanta. Just a ton of remote broadcasts on the road. And then here is obviously my station when I sing. This is our sheet music for our shows. We bring the rhythm section in, which is the drums, the piano, bass guitar, lead guitar, and my backup singers, and we rehearse that part. And then every Monday night we get together with the rest of the orchestra, the trumpets, the trombones, and the brass and everything else, and then we fill the dead spots in with that. Then over here is where I do my radio show. We used to do a daily show. When I started this 25 years ago, we did a daily show. When we decided about 3 or 4 months into it that we wanted to do a celebrity show, doing it live at 10 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday, is 7 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast.
Right.
So, the first hour we say, hey, our guest is Bob Hope. And then the next guest would be Dick Clark, but it would be like a half hour later. So we only had 10 minutes of Bob Hope, so we'd bring in Joe Schwartz in the meantime. Who's Joe Schwartz?
Right.
Well, he wrote a book about how to fold napkins for a wedding. So we decided to go to the weekends, make it a weekend feature. It airs on Saturday and Sundays on the USA Radio Network and also on Cable Radio Network. And then we also put it up in streaming on demand 24/7 the following week on ronseggi.com. We do
Now,
it.
how long have you been doing this format?
Probably the last 10 years, maybe a little bit longer, maybe about 10 or 15.
And just listening, and just the time we've spent together today, I'm going to ask you, right? So I always ask, the question.
No, go ahead.
I don't, after listening to you and the energy, you're not done this year.
Oh, no.
I always say to people, the phrase is, what's the end game? You have no end game. You're going to keep...
No, my attorney buddy asks me that all the time. He says, what are you doing?
Because you've been doing this for...
Well, first of all, Milton Berle told me one time, not to be a name dropper.
Milton Berle.
He
Go
said,
ahead and drop it.
He said to me, I asked him, I said, don't ever retire. He said, I did that once. He says, you can only play golf so much. He says, every place I went, people knew me, so I might as well get paid for it.
Right.
Well, I don't have the problem Milton Berle has, and everybody knows who I am. But the reality of it is, what I do, whether it's on radio, TV, or on stage, is not heavy lifting. I'm not digging a ditch. I'm not in a construction crew where at the end of the day say, I really can't take this anymore.
Right.
I want to go out and I want to just, play tennis or play golf or cut the grass. I'm done. Ed McMahon was 86 years old when he died, and he worked the week before he passed away. Look at Tony Bennett. He's 88 years old.
This is your grind. This is what you do. And you get to do it from home.
If I want to come back at night and do some editing or do some voiceover work, and there's nothing good on TV, I walk to work.
Right.
I'm getting exercise.
So you're helping the environment.
I got 7 feet here I got to walk to. So it's not like I'm saving gas and my car's batteries are dead because I never drive them. But no, it has its lonely moments sometimes.
Yeah.
But all in all, if I wanted to have people there, I guess I could. I'm a kind of guy that always wants to dress for the occasion. Even when I was a disc jockey at a small radio station in Pennsylvania, I would go in dressed up because it made me feel good, even if I was working Saturday nights. However, I find myself sometimes in running pants and a t-shirt because it's just easier to do.
Easier.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, it's okay.
Yeah, every once in a while.
But that's always the time. I find now that as I'm branching off into this, I find that's the time I'll get caught.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I'll be in a shirt and a pair of shorts.
Yeah. And somebody will come in. Right. That's
so
it. Yeah.
Duly noted.
Yeah.
And I take advantage of an opportunity to now sit down with Ron and get to know the man behind the microphone. I'm a fan. I'm first Elvis. So listening to, the car and the fact that you and Joe Esposito are still in communication and just the pictures and I feel like we have this tie now with Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon.
Sure.
And my daughter will hear about this and
Yeah,
she's going to learn her history on the hi-oh.
Hi-oh. Let me tell you a couple stories about my pal Ed McMahon, who I'm doing a book on.
Please.
Okay. And I'm going to give you a scoop. Okay. The name of the book is called The Third Banana, okay? Because I was kind of Ed's second banana, and he was Johnny's second banana, so in essence, I'm a third banana, okay? It's a very complicated and probably very sad story. But Ed and I were very, very close. He used to sit in his family room days on time. He'd stay here with me all the time, and I'd go out and stay with him. And we had a great relationship. He never, ever, ever said no to me. When we come up with all these bizarre ideas, we own the vodka company. Can we have a picture of can we have a bottle of the vodka for us? And we started a vodka company. And we learned right away never to come up with an idea while drinking vodka. Because,
even if it's yours.
Even if it's ours, because it was a great idea at the time. But it later evolved into maybe not such a great idea because we were both pitchmen. you know,
Right.
but we didn't know a damn thing about vodka other than how it tasted, okay? But there are so many stories with it. It was hilarious, and I'll play you some bloopers. This was the vodka. As you can see, we sampled it, and it was called McMahon Perfect, and I had a picture of Edward right here. He designed the bottle, and we had it done in Italy. And I want to tell you something. It was processed 5 times, you know. It was, you could drink it like water.
Right.
You know, we used to like to drink dirty martinis, but it was a shame to put vermouth and olive juice in it because it was so smooth, you know. And it was one of our many, many ventures.
That's amazing.
But I got to tell you a funny story. Before we became partners, we formed a company called 452 Chelmsford Entertainment, and I'll explain that to you. But before we formed that company, I actually worked for him before we were partners. I was an announcer on one of his television shows, Next Big Star. So we're having dinner one night at the Portofino here in Orlando at Universal Studios, and there's my wife and myself and Ed and his wife Pam and his son Jeff and his wife, because it was his wife's birthday, his daughter-in-law's birthday. After dinner, he said to me, he says, "Can my son and I talk to you for a moment?" And I said, "Sure." And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know what this is about. So he said, "We'd like to know if you'd be the announcer on Next Big Star." And I was a little taken back by that. And I said, "The announcer? You want me to be the announcer?" "Yeah." And I said, trying to be quick and funny, I said, "Well, then I only have one question. And it's a monetary question." And he looked at me like, "You know, I'm giving you this opportunity. You're worried about the money?" And he said, "What's that?" I said, "Who pays who?" Because I had to pay him to do the job, okay?
Right.
But later on, we decided we're going to form a company. So he says, "We're going to form a company, and it's going to be you and I, and we're going to be 50-50 owners." And I'm thinking to myself, boy, I can see it now. McMahon Seggi Productions. I'm going to take all the stationery and bring it to my class reunion and say, "Look, I'm partners with Ed McMahon. You thought I was a schmo in high school? Now I'm..."
Look at me now.
Because when he offered me the job, I said to him, when I said about the money, I said, "You mean to tell me that the ultimate announcer wants me to be the announcer? You know, that's a pretty pressured job." So I was all excited about that. I could see the stationery. McMahon Seggi Productions, Hollywood, California. You know, I ordered tons of the stationery before I even knew what it was. So one day he said, "Well, I got all the papers signed. I got the name of the corporation. It's a great name." I'm thinking to myself, it's going to be a fantastic name. He comes back with 452 Chelmsford Entertainment. And I said, as Curdy, after I regained consciousness, and they got me off the floor, you know, I said, "What the hell is 452 Chelmsford Entertainment?" He says, "That's the address and the street address where I grew up in Massachusetts, in Lowell, Massachusetts. And all my dreams of Seggi McMahon Productions, Hollywood, down the drain." And he saw that. He saw that. When the stationery came up, sure enough, it said 452 Chelmsford Entertainment, and underneath that it said Ed McMahon, Ron Seggi Corporation. That's the kind of guy Ed was. He was a sweetheart. We were back in my music room one night, and he sat on the couch, and I was singing because I had some tracks, and I was doing some Sinatra songs. He was very close to Frank Sinatra, very close. Johnny Carson and Sinatra Sinatra wasn't really that fond of him,
Right.
but he loved Ed because Ed was a man's man, right? So, you know, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I've sung like every Sinatra song I sung, every Bobby Darin song, every Elvis song. And he's sitting there, "Do this one, do Mac the Knife," right? And I said, "You know, Ed, I'm going to stop right here." I says, "This is an example of a real loser." And he looked at me and he said, "What do you mean?" I says, "I'm sitting in a room, very small room, singing to you as my only audience. Where the hell were you when I was starting off and you were in Star Search? Why couldn't I have that audience there?" This guy founded Ray Romano, all these, you know, Brad Garrett, Rosie O'Donnell. He found all these celebrities. I have an audience with Mr. Star Search, and the show's over.
And you sit in the room.
And I'm sitting in a room. I said, that's what you call bad timing, you know. But he was a good guy.
And I wanted to touch on really quick 2 Grammy nominations. Mm-hmm. And you talked about it a little bit as we were walking through. And I always say it's, you know, it's not bad to, whatever the correct term is, not bad to lose to Don McLean.
No, that was the year 1972 where Don in fact, he sat at the same table I did. It was up in New York. They had a split Grammy that year. Half of it came from New York, half it came from L.A. And he won it for American Pie, which is a classic song, right. And of course about the passing of Buddy Holly.
Right.
But that was a big deal. Radio stations really delved into the lyrics to it, and for a long time, Don never really admitted what it was about. And then later on said, this is what it is.
I'm a big history. I love the history of any industry, but especially something like music and then now radio. And then it doesn't end there. And always the Bill DeMott Experience for me is people who coach or help or lead someone in a direction. So it's kind of my theme is you have so much going on and you don't need to do anything else, but then talk to me about all your charity work.
Well, I guess when you're in the this business, the high-profile business, you could be like a Donald Trump, who's a high-profile guy, or a wrestler like yourself, high-profile guy. Early on, I was still a disc jockey at the time, back in the early 70s, late 60s. I became a teenage march chairman for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, which led to an association with Danny Thomas and an association with St. Jude's in Memphis that I have to this very day. I wrote some articles for them in the Promise magazine. Every time we lose a member of our family, we always have contributions made to St. Jude's Hospital. I've worked with American Cancer Society. I lost my father at a very young age, so I've done a lot of work for the American Heart Association, very close. And Larry King has been on my show talking about his ordeal with heart. Also, this past week, I hosted a charity a gala event at the Waldorf Astoria here in Orlando for Kids Beating Cancer, which was a black tie event for youngsters beating cancer. I've worked with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, which is Last Wish, and I know you have been involved with that. And I also am involved with a charity called ELK Charity Challenge. It combines my love for automobiles and my love for public service. ELK stands for Everyone Loves Kids. The first annual ELK Challenge was last May. It'll be another one this May. And we started off in Los Angeles. The first day we were there, we went over to Jay's garage to visit with Leno, who I've known for a long time.
Jay Leno,
yeah. And we talked cars a little bit. Then we went up the California Coast Highway up to San Diego, and bringing awareness and raising money for kids. And the charities there were St. Jude's Hospital, Texas EquiSearch, and the Shriners organization. Right. I'm doing a charity music concert for the Shriners coming up in a couple of months also. So I've been very active in charitable organizations. I actually can't say no. Wounded Warriors has a special place. It's difficult to do all of them.
Right.
But you can do as many as you can. And I just feel an obligation to do that. I can't say no to one. When somebody comes to me with a charity, I can't say no.
And now that I know Ron shares a love of cars with Jay Leno, I had to find out what was in the garage. I gotta ask you, what's behind door number one?
I have a fetish, if you will, for cars. I have since I was a little boy. And I got a couple of cool cars. That, of course, is a Rolls Royce. But this is a car that I'm real proud of, and I'll pull it out for you later,
okay.
Bill. But this is a Stutz Blackhawk, and there are only 550 made between 1970 and 1986. Oh. They made them as a coupe, and they also made them as a four-door. A lot of celebrities in the 70s had it. Kenny Rogers had a four-door. Right. Then they made a convertible model, and then they made a limousine. They made like 3 limousines. And the limousines were like for the Shah Ran and all these, but they were terrible because the longer they made it, the more stuff they put on it. But the coupe was famous. Elvis bought the first one, and
Is this it?
No, this is not it. No, this is a 75. The first one he had was a 70.
So you said Elvis. Yeah. I'm getting
no, they thought initially that this might be Muhammad Ali's, but I later researched it and it wasn't. But people who had them was Elvis had 5, Dean Martin had 2, Sammy Davis Jr. had a couple. Evil Knievel, Muhammad Ali,
Oh, my
Lucille Ball.
gosh.
From Rona Martin, Dan Rowan.
Right.
And they had, there was just kind of the car to have back in the 70s. This car is very difficult to go out in because
Yeah.
it takes so long to explain that story to everybody that stops me. This is the way the car comes from the factory. This is not something that was added later
Right.
on, because the trunk looks like this. Okay, this is all fur, and the
Oh my
tools are
gosh.
in that
And the tools are in this fur
in that
case.
fur case. Yeah.
So yeah, you're not storing that.
No, you're not storing transmission parts in the back seat of this.
This
No.
is nicer than my bed.
Yeah, well, actually, my wife has threatened that if she gets mad at me, this is where I might be sleeping from time to time. But it's pretty
Wow.
cool. Yeah,
And it came like this.
yeah, that's the way it comes from the factory. Yeah, yeah,
Golly.
yeah. So, and when Elvis wanted it, they said it would take 6 to 8 months to build it, and he said, no, I want this one, not this one, but it was black, and he said, I want this one, and the dealer said, I need this one to show.
Right.
This is the demo. He says, I need people seeing me drive it. And he said, where's it going to get more exposure? If you drive it or if I drive it? And he handed him the keys and he said, take it.
And even though Ron didn't hand me the keys, we still got to go for one more ride.
No.
And you're a dad.
I'm a dad,
And
and I actually, I don't, I haven't said this in a long time, but I'm also a grandfather. I have a little grandson who's 2 years old, Dominic, and a little granddaughter who's 4 months old, Gianna. And I look at those two kids and I think to myself, this is why I'm out doing things for Everyone Loves Kids and Kids Beating Cancer. Couldn't imagine those kids
You're
sick.
setting the, and that's
Yeah, I mean,
what it's about.
That's
You're setting
that's
the
what it's
pace
about.
for
Yeah,
everyone else. And,
it really
and that's
is.
just awesome. I don't think we talk about those things enough.
No.
What people do.
Right.
And for people with fame and a career and people need to know that. And I'm a big fan of people knowing that.
Well, you do a ton
And,
of work
well,
along
thank
those lines.
you.
Yeah.
But just thank you for that. And to me, it's about the kids.
Yeah.
So that's huge.
You know, they have that commercial on about the dogs, you know, and I like dogs, but that's a very sad commercial, and I know people who turn that commercial off because they can't take those sad eyes, and I understand that, and I have empathy with that, but it's even tougher when you're talking about little kids.
Yeah.
Okay, or wounded warriors who are out there losing limbs and lives and struggling. I can never understand why there's a fund for wounded warriors. The United States government, not to get political, should give them anything they want.
Right.
Anything they want at any
have
time.
jobs.
They should have jobs, they should have an income stream, they should have, if they want an ice cream cone or a new Cadillac, they should have it.
You should have a car.
Yeah, they should have,
right.
they should be denied nothing. Nothing.
I agree.
Nothing.
I agree.
When I was 7 years old, my mother went to a shower. My brothers are 10 and 12 years older than me, so they were out having a good time. My father said, what do you want to do today? And I was like 7 years old. I just got back from California on a trip with my mother and my aunt and went to go see Bob Barker do Truth or Consequences and Tennessee Ernie Ford, who I admired. And I said, let's go to a radio station. And he happened to sponsor on a local radio station. So we went down there on a Sunday afternoon. And I met the disc jockey. And I was totally enamored. I was 7. I came home and said, this is what I want to do. Okay? When I was about 9 or 10, we built a little radio. In fact, I got the transmitter over there. It went in about a 3 or 4 block radius. And I had a bunch of disc jockeys. Okay? And all the guys in my basement that would come and do this radio station ultimately got into radio except for one. Okay? And I did that, you know, I was 10, 11, 12 years old, 13 years old. When I went into senior high school in 10th grade, a buddy of mine, uncle, was a teacher. But he was also a radio and television newscaster. So I buddied up to my friend and I says, why don't you tell your uncle about what I do? And he says, well, what do you do? He said, you know, he knew.
Right.
So he talked his uncle into coming over to my house. He went in my basement and he saw the radio station, you know, and the turntables and everything else. I bought a control board for $10 from the police department that they threw out in the rubbish. And it didn't do anything, but it looked good. And He said, you know, I'm going to come back with our program director. So about 3 nights later, they came back, the teacher and the program director of this radio station, and they sat in our kitchen at home with my mother and my father, and I went downstairs and was doing a show. And after about 10, 15 minutes, you know, my father called me and says, come upstairs. And at the kitchen table at 14, they hired me as a disc jockey.
At 14 years
14
old.
years old, yeah. And I was a disc jockey at that station when I was a 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And then when I went into college, I went to go for the #1 station in town. And then when I got out of, did that for 12 years, I was 29 at that time. And then I bought my own FM station in my hometown. And I beat the radio station that I went to go see when I was 7 years old in the ratings. Beat them so bad, they ended up wanting to buy my station after 6 years. And the fella that I went to go see when I was 7 years old, I worked with for 12 years, and then I tried to hire him to work for me. And we were friends to the day he died, and I interviewed him on my national show to say that he used to always hate when I said I was 7 years old when I went to go see him because it implied that he was older. You know? But that's how I got into broadcasting.
Back in Ron's house, you can't help but notice the beautiful decor. But there's more to this man. He's also a history buff.
Bill, let me take you through here. I think I mentioned to you earlier that I'm kind of a president's buff.
Yes.
And this started off to be a small project and ended up to be a larger one. This room is a mess right now because I'm working on some very big projects with Iran. and I got my red phone here just in the event that I have to call
Does
Putin.
that phone work for real?
Yeah, Putin's on the other end of this. Yeah, Putin. But everything here, I give you a little synopsis here. This is, of course, the very popular picture I was taken in the Oval Office. By the way, that's the most famous picture at the Nixon Library. Believe it or not.
Elvis and
Yeah.
Nixon.
This is my son with Bill Clinton. This is when I interviewed Jimmy Carter. George Bush, we spent some time, several times in the Oval Office and at the White House at Christmas time with my family. It was a nice letter that he sent me when my mother passed away. And this is me at the podium making my press conference debut. Okay, and then we have some pictures here. And I was telling you before that the Oval Office, which is right down the hall, this is the Rose Garden, but where the press room is actually on top of the swimming pool. There we go.
There we are.
See?
Son of a gun.
Right there?
Right on the tiles.
Yeah, right on the top. See, Ron and Claudia and my son underneath it. And I believe here you'll see George Bush, 41, yeah. So, and then that in 1 week, I was at Ford Theater to see where Lincoln was shot. And then the same week, I was at Dallas to see where Kennedy was shot. This is a autograph that I got when I was 11 years old when Richard Nixon was the vice president. I had met him down in South Florida in Key Biscayne, and that's when he was vice president.
No kidding.
This is the flag I was telling you about that I got from Ed McMahon's funeral. This is still wrapped, but this is President Ford is the last member of the Warren Commission to be alive, and he took this and he autographed just a limited amount of the books, and this is one of them, and that's him autographing them.
Man.
And this is the certificate of authenticity. And so these are keepsakes for my sons, and I opened one just to check it, but that's the Warren Commission. And then this is kind of a unique thing here. This is the Easter eggs that they use
On the lawn?
On the lawn, yeah. This is the Easter egg hunts. And it's kind of an unusual story. My friend who was the state controller, General, 3-star General Robert Milligan from the United States Marine Corps was the state controller. His associate controller's brother was the White House secretary, White House florist. And Richard Nixon was wearing this tie clasp. And he said, Mr. President, I really like that tie clasp. He took it off and he gave it to him. His brother passed away. He knew I was a president's fan. He gave it to me. in my visits to different libraries, I got this, of course, at the Truman Library, that's famous saying, and everybody gives me stuff. There, of course, the jelly beans,
Right.
you know, and the Air Force One matches. And this here is, this vehicle here is the Kennedy limousine in the exact configuration of how everybody was sitting at the time of the assassination. This is it's a 39 Lincoln Special. This is the limousine that FDR used.
Oh.
However, this came after another famous car. Right after the war started, they were worried that the president was just in a regular sedan.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And they had to get, you know, the same day.
Yes.
Go ahead and tell us.
Is it Al Capone's
Al
car?
Capone's
Yeah.
car. Al Capone's car. This was at the Reagan Library. If you've ever been to the Reagan Library, it's fascinating. It really is. This flag flew over the United States Capitol on January 8th. You know what that date is?
No, sir.
Okay, January 8th, 2001, as a recipient of the Honorable John Micah, Member of Congress, this flag was flown in recognition of the 40th anniversary of Ron Seggi in radio and television broadcasting. They said you could, and this flew on top of the U.S. Capitol, and then they sent me the flag. Now they said there were 2 dates available, January 8th and January 9th. Now, January 9th was Richard Nixon's birthday. Do you know whose January 8th birthday was?
Elvis.
There you go. And I've done a lot of research over the years on the Kennedy assassination. And that started probably in the early 70s. I'll tell you how it started. We were talking before about being nervous about going on the air. Mm-hmm. My first encounter as a singer, I was a nervous wreck. So I delved myself in a book about the Kennedy assassination because it got my mind off of my opening date. And what happened was it ultimately became an obsession with me. I could go to seminars and everything else. And I have a lot of theories on that. But this is a little bit of my...
what a great room.
Yeah, and at night it looks cool because everything is lit up and everything else. And Ed used to always call me and say, are you calling from the Oval? Yeah. But, and then, of course, the granddaddy of them all is the carpet. And this carpet actually changed during the Truman years. And I believe, and you're going to catch me on a story that I don't know the ending to, but it was either the eagle's head was turned the other way or there was an olive branch added. Something was added, so it was a little bit more of a softer type of impression that they wanted to convey. And you know what's funny about the presidency? It's the only occupation, and it's the most important job in the world that doesn't have on-the-job, that only has on-the-job training.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
You know, you no matter what you've done in public life, it's still a different ball game when you walk in that Oval
It's a
Office.
whole different ball game.
Yeah.
So between me and you
Yeah.
in this room, because I'm sure there's been some secret meetings
Well,
in this room.
this is bugged. This is
is-
exactly like the Oval.
I-
Wait a minute, hold
I
on.
don't want to believe
Oh,
that.
wait a minute, hold on a second. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Talking to the highlighter.
Talking.
We went from 7 years old
Yeah.
in Erie, Pennsylvania, and stayed. Most kids have a hobby, right? I speak for myself. I played football. I got to play football through college, but it wasn't what I made my living at. So I always bounced. 7 years old. I want to do that. You built into owning and running your own stations into this. And like for everybody who needs to catch up to this, like for Jimmy Fallon, who's one of the most talked about cats in the industry.
Yeah, good guy.
He's coming to talk to you.
Yeah. Jimmy's a good guy. Yes.
Some guys would, I'm going to say this the wrong way because I just speak how it comes out of my head. Some guys would just sit in the corner and go, okay, I'll try to stay with it. You're relevant. People, you're an unsung guy. Like you said it, talking. Like you walk down the street and once in a while somebody will go, but for the most part, nobody knows where you are until they tune in.
Well, and it's nice of you to say that. If you want the total opposite of relevancy and value, ask my children because they could care less. I will tell you a funny story. I was thinking about this the other day. The first day I was on radio, I was on a Saturday night, 6 to midnight, on a station that it just didn't have a lot of listeners, okay? And when I got up the next morning, I purposely walked to the corner store, which was like from like a block and a half. Like there were 6 houses, you know, between it, thinking that somebody would recognize me, other than from the neighborhood. Other than say, that's Ron. He must be walking to the corner store, saying something. We heard you on the radio last night. That didn't happen. Nothing. But I did have the opportunity because I did so many record hops, so many personal appearances, TV commercials promoting my disc jockey days, that I was a recognizable commodity in that town for being in a business that is not as exposed as a television business. Okay, I mean I would do 3 or 4 record hops. We called them record hops at the time, a week. You know, and if you're in front of, and did assemblies at high schools all the time. The radio station was always assembly intensive, you know, and of course it was fun for me because you have to understand that I was basically the age of these kids. I mean, I met my wife. She came to one of my record hops. I mean, you know, it wasn't like I was there and I was like in my late 30s and I was home with 4 kids and I had to go spend time with these teenagers. This was like a cultivating ground for dates for me. I mean, this is like this is like walking into a Corvette dealership for me, you know.
So where did the music and the singing come in?
Well, you know, it's funny. I mentioned Tennessee Ford before. You know, everybody always equates me with the songs of, you know, the Elvis, the Neil Diamond, stuff like that. But I was so enthralled by Tennessee Ford when I was a kid. I loved them. But I always liked to perform. But I realized that, you know, it's like the kid that says, I want to be a fireman or a policeman when he's, you know, when he's 8 years old, and then he ends up being a high school professor, you know. So, but I was sitting in these studios for an extended period of time, 6-8 hour shifts, listening to these songs. You got the top 40, the top 50. You know, you're listening to these songs like 4 or 5 times a piece in that rotation. And I could tell you every time a tambourine hit a microphone, and it was just, I knew every word to every song. And I'm singing, and because you're by yourself, and you're kind of a wacko. And I said, you know, I think I can do this, you know. So I waited till I graduated from college, so I would have a minimal amount of people from college giving me a hard time. And I went out and I did it, and it was received. You know, I mean, the night I first did it, believe me when I tell you, every disc jockey in town was there waiting for me to fail. Right. And this is double jeopardy. Oh yeah, boy, this was their time to shine, right? But then, it's like anything, you get a couple of applause, and you start thinking to yourself, well, you know. Now I did that until I bought a radio station. Then I stopped. And the reason I stopped is what I didn't need is my employees coming there and seeing me in some studded jacket at night singing Rhinestone Cowboy, and then the next morning having a sales meeting. Right? I didn't need that. All right. So so I stopped for many years, and then I came down here and started again. Well, when I started singing, and I did nightclubs, okay, I used a 4-man rhythm section: drums, piano, guitar, and bass guitar, and 2 female backup singers, which was good for clubs. I said, when I get back into this, which is what I decided about 3 or 4 years ago, I said, I want to, you know, a lot of people, you know, the look. You don't have the look. I mean, if you went out and wrestled and there was nobody else wrestling, you were by yourself. Right. It would still be a wrestling match, but it lacks the other person, you know, and you don't have that look. The look is important, you know. So so I did this, and now I'm spoiled because, you know, when you're on stage and you got them horns behind you and them trombones and those saxophones.
You have a full orchestra.
Yeah, well, 15 pieces.
Well, you can't downsize one night and go, oh, let's just do 5 pieces again.
Well, you can, but it's like listening to a Bose speaker and then 2 Dixie cups and a string. And, you know, we'll go from a rock and roll 50s medley to My Way, to God Bless the USA, to American Trilogy, to If I Can Dream by Crystal Gale, to Mac the Knife, to a Roy Orbison, Pretty Woman, okay? And we're going fast, slow, and we're and Gene Pitney, a lot of Gene Pitney songs. We're trying to take them, first of all, we're trying to hit their hearts with memories. Right. Because that's the thing. Once you hit that, and the demographic we're after is a little bit older demographic, but once I watch the audience, and I'm doing a Gene Pitney song, and then I'm doing a Del Shannon song, and I'm watching the reaction of the audience, okay? And you know exactly what's going through their mind, where they were, who they were dating, if it was a good affair, if it was a bad affair, I met my wife, I met my uncle, whatever the case may be, and you see those reactions, and that's the ride you got to take them on. So when they leave, they feel good.
So did you naturally, your interest in radio and then in music, but were you a fan or did you become a fan?
Oh, I was a fan.
Like from the beginning?
From the beginning.
And then it just got...
Yeah, yeah. And plus I live in the past, so I can't tell you what I did yesterday, but I could tell you what I...
That's it. I think that's the term I'm going to use.
I could tell you...
I live in the past.
Yeah, I could tell you the first date I went with the first girlfriend. You know, I lost my mind when it comes to that, you know. But you know what? I watch The Lone Ranger every night, and it's got to be black and white to really be good.
Right.
Okay, but the reason I think that happens, Bill, is because I think it's human nature. Although I have friends that don't share this thought, and they're my age, I think it's human nature sometimes to go back to what was considered an easier time. You know, I mean, when I was watching The Lone Ranger as a kid, I didn't have to worry about a mortgage payment. I didn't have to worry about, you know, my car running out of gas. I didn't have to worry about, you know, the pool not working. I didn't have to worry about nothing.
Right.
You know, my parents worried about that, and I went out and rode my bike, and we were down the road, you know.
I'm looking behind me, and I see it there, and I know there's a story behind Howdy Doody.
Oh, yeah.
Give
Yeah,
me
there's
one Howdy Doody, your favorite, because I think I'm looking at Elvis, and I'm looking at Lee Greenwood, and I'm looking at Tony Orlando, and on the corner of my eye, and there's Johnny Carson, and Ed McMahon, who we've talked about, and I see Milton Berle, and I'm drawn to Howdy Doody.
Well, you know what? That was and I'm actually with Howdy. Howdy's there, okay. First, Buffalo Bob Smith. Did I say that right? No,
Yes, Buffalo Bob.
Okay. I love Buffalo Bob Smith. And my sons, they, at their ages, 39 and 36, they cry when I tell them. They start to choke up when they at Christmas time find out that the Frosty the Snowman's melting. Okay, this chokes them up. I choke up when Clarabelle says goodbye on the last episode. The first time I interviewed Buffalo Bob Smith, it was like interviewing Reagan.
Right.
Okay, I mean, this is Buffalo Bob Smith. Okay, Buffalo Bob. And during the whole interview, I called him Buffalo Bill. But I didn't realize I called him Buffalo Bill. And if you remember, at the time, there was a TV show called Buffalo Bill. Okay? Now, the guy never corrected me. He must have thought I was a loony bird. Okay? And I went through this whole interview. Wow, Buffalo Bill, you're my favorite. Oh, Buffalo Bill, Buffalo Bill, Buffalo Bill. I got all done on my way. I said, do you know that you called him Buffalo Bill? I said, no, I listened back to the tape, Buffalo Bill, through the whole thing. So when we took the picture, I apologized to him. This was a couple of years later because I interviewed him several times, but that was pretty embarrassing. You know, it's like you know, like if Clark Gable was your absolute idol and you called him Larry Gable. You know, I mean, you know, or.
But he did the whole interview.
He did the. He was. He went.
Is that one of those things when the interview's over, you just go put your head in the corner?
Oh, jeez, right in the corner, right in. I've had a few of those.
Well, this is just fantastic.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate. This has been fun.
I appreciate you letting me come in.
Sorry I talked your ear off.
No.
But when the producer said this was all about me,
it's all about you.
Man, I couldn't pass that one. I don't hear that very often.
It's all about you. Let's talk, you and me. You're in this room day and night, right? You've seen a lot of things go on here. Am I the biggest star here? Like right now, right? Daddy's not here. Who's the biggest star in the room? You got anything you want to tell me? This is the time. You got anything? What do you got? You think you noticed anything was missing? Which is the best microphone? What do you think? Think you missed that gold plaque on the wall? I'm talking to you. This is hard to do a one-man interview.